"Christopher, you really thought you could hide from me in this new apartment?" The voice emerged from the pink collectible figure sitting on his coffee table, its black button eyes reflecting light that wasn't there. The doll's shadow writhed against the wall behind it, forming shapes that resembled grasping hands, while its own plastic form remained perfectly still. Christopher's laptop screen flickered and died mid-sentence as he worked on his freelance graphic design project, the cursor blinking once before the entire system crashed with a sound like breaking glass. The rent notice crumpled in his sweaty palm, 3 months overdue after his divorce settlement had drained his savings, leaving him desperate for any income stream. He'd bought the limited edition Labubu figure online for $200, planning to resell it for triple that amount to collectors who obsessed over these things. Now, it sat there, lips curved in what manufacturers probably called a playful expression, but in the dim light of his studio apartment, it looked predatory. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "The shadow knows what you did to Emily." Christopher's ex-wife's name glowed on the screen before the message deleted itself. The building's hallway lights began strobing, casting the doll's shadow in rapid, jerky movements across his wall like stop-motion animation. When the lights steadied, the shadow had changed position entirely. Now it appeared to be reaching toward Christopher's bedroom door. The neighbor's dog upstairs, usually silent, began howling at 3 in the morning. Christopher woke to find the Labubu doll turned 90 degrees from where he'd left it, now facing his kitchen. His coffee maker activated on its own, brewing a full pot of coffee he didn't remember programming. The digital clock on his microwave displayed symbols instead of numbers, foreign characters that hurt his eyes to look at directly. During what should have been a productive Thursday morning, Christopher lost 4 hours completely. One moment, he was sketching logo concepts at his drafting table. The next, he was standing in his bathroom staring at his reflection, marker ink staining his fingers black. The mirror showed him writing across his forehead in backward letters, "She didn't fall." His own handwriting, but he couldn't remember picking up the marker. "You pushed Emily down those stairs," the doll whispered from the living room, its voice carrying impossible distance through his small apartment. Christopher ran to confront it, but the figure sat exactly where he'd placed it days ago. That same manufactured smile, that same innocent pose. His laptop had somehow turned itself back on, displaying his deleted browser history from the night Emily died, searches for making accidents look natural and head injury symptoms that he'd cleared months ago. The doll's shadow began moving independently of any light source, sliding up walls and across the ceiling while the plastic toy remained motionless. Christopher watched the dark shape position itself above his bed like a patient predator. His phone rang with his own number calling itself, and when he answered, he heard Emily's voice saying, "I remember everything now, Chris. I remember you following me upstairs. I remember your hands on my back." Sleep became impossible as the shadow grew bolder, detaching completely from the doll to patrol his apartment. It would hover at the foot of his bed, shape-shifting between Emily's silhouette and something far worse. Elongated limbs, too many joints, fingers that split into more fingers. His neighbors stopped making eye contact in the hallway. The building superintendent claimed no one had complained about any strange noises from his unit, even though Christopher heard the shadow scratching inside his walls every night. The doll began appearing in locations where Christopher had never placed it. On top of his refrigerator, inside his shower, sitting on his pillow when he woke up, turned to watch him sleep. Each time he moved it back to the coffee table, it would migrate again, always closer to his bed, always angled to observe him. Security cameras he checked online showed his apartment empty and still, but his own eyes told him different stories. Emily's sister texted him, "Had the strangest dream about M last night. She said, you have something that belongs to her." The message arrived at 3:17 a.m., the exact time Emily had died, according to the coroner's report. Christopher's hands shook as he typed back, "What are you talking about?" But his phone showed the message as failed to send. A second text from Emily's sister appeared immediately. She says the shadow remembers what the doll won't let her forget. Christopher researched the Labubu manufacturer online, diving into forums where collectors shared stories about cursed editions and factory defects. One thread mentioned a specific production run where workers had reported strange accidents during assembly. 3 deaths in 2 weeks, all from falls down concrete stairs. The factory had burned down the following month. His serial number matched that batch exactly. The shadow began leaving physical evidence of its presence. Scratches carved into his hardwood floors, spelling out "murderer" in letters 3 feet tall. Emily's jewelry appearing in his apartment, pieces he'd claimed were lost in the divorce settlement. Her wedding ring materialized inside his coffee cup. Her necklace draped around the doll's plastic neck like an offering. On Friday evening, Christopher's building lost power except for his unit. Every light in his apartment blazed while the rest of the structure sat in darkness. His neighbors gathered in the courtyard, pointing up at his windows, their voices carrying through the thin walls. Why is his place still lit up? The doll sat in his kitchen window, visible from the street, and Christopher realized it was performing for an audience. The shadow spoke in Emily's voice. "You can't sell me, Chris. I'm not going anywhere, not until everyone knows what you did." Christopher grabbed the doll, feeling its plastic surface burn hot against his palms. He shoved it into a box, sealed it with duct tape, and drove to the post office to ship it across the country to a random address. But when he returned home, the Labubu sat on his dashboard, somehow having appeared during his drive. Christopher's professional design skills had always involved problem solving, breaking complex visual puzzles into manageable components. He began treating the supernatural manifestation like a technical challenge, documenting patterns in the shadow's behavior, cataloging times and locations of each incident. The entity was strongest between midnight and dawn. It responded to guilt and denial. It fed on his attempts to hide the truth about Emily's death. Emily's mother called Saturday morning. "I dreamed about my daughter last night, Christopher. She showed me a doll with black button eyes. She said it was holding her here, keeping her from moving on." The old woman's voice carried certainty that chilled Christopher more than any supernatural threat. "She needs you to tell the truth about what really happened on those stairs." The shadow cornered Christopher in his bedroom Sunday night, no longer hiding its intentions. It pressed against him like freezing water, and through its touch, he experienced Emily's final moments. The argument about money, her threat to expose his gambling debts, his rage building as she turned to walk away. His hands on her back. her surprised cry as she tumbled forward, the sickening sound of her skull cracking against concrete steps. Christopher called 911 from his bathroom, confessing to Emily's murder while the shadow danced triumphant circles around his apartment. The dispatcher asked him to repeat himself 3 times, the connection crackling with static each time he said Emily's name. When police sirens approached his building, the doll's plastic smile seemed wider, more satisfied, its shadow finally aligning perfectly with its physical form. Detective Maria Santos documented Christopher's confession while crime scene investigators reopened Emily's case file. The coroner had noted inconsistencies in the injury patterns, suggesting force rather than accidental impact. Christopher's financial records revealed desperate gambling debts that provided clear motive. His brother confirmed Christopher had asked about inheritance laws just days before Emily's death, specifically about spouses dying without wills. As police led Christopher from his apartment in handcuffs, he glimpsed the Labubu doll one final time through his window. Its shadow had returned to normal proportions, no longer moving independently, no longer reaching toward hidden truths. Emily's spirit had found her voice through the collector's toy, using Christopher's own guilt and greed as instruments of justice. In his cell that night, Christopher experienced his first peaceful sleep in months. The shadow was gone, its work finished, but Emily's memory would follow him through years of legal proceedings and eventual imprisonment. He learned too late that some debts can't be hidden, some secrets can't be buried, and some shadows belong to the dead who refuse to rest until truth comes to light. The Labubu doll disappeared from Christopher's apartment sometime during police processing, though no officer remembered removing it from evidence. Online collectors' forums reported a surge in haunted toy sightings over the following weeks, always appearing to people with guilty consciences, always accompanied by shadows that moved wrong in the light. 3 months after Christopher's arrest, Patricia Williams discovered the same pink figure sitting on her kitchen counter in Riverside, California. She'd never ordered a collectible toy, never heard of Labubu, until she Googled the strange creature with its button eyes and vinyl smile. The online auction house where she'd supposedly purchased it showed a transaction she didn't remember making, charged to her credit card the same night her brother Marcus had called asking about their father's will. Patricia, we both know Dad changed his mind about the inheritance before he died, the doll whispered as she lifted it to examine the manufacturer's mark. Marcus had been asking pointed questions about their father's final weeks, specifically about the medication dosages Patricia had administered during his home hospice care. The shadow stretching across her granite countertop formed letters. Overdose. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Found Dad's original will in his safe. Interesting how he wanted to split everything equally before you convinced him otherwise. The message deleted itself before Patricia could screenshot it, but her hands remembered typing late-night searches about morphine toxicity and pain management protocols. Her nursing background had made her the obvious choice to care for their dying father, but she'd seen it as an opportunity to secure her children's college funds. The doll relocated itself throughout Patricia's house with the same methodical patience it had shown in Christopher's apartment. She'd place it in her garage only to find it watching her from the top of her bedroom dresser. Each migration brought it closer to her father's old room, where she'd adjusted his medication pump in those final days. The shadow had begun tracing injection sites on the wall, marking each location where she'd administered extra doses. Patricia's teenage daughter, Amelia, noticed the toy first. "Mom, why do you have that creepy doll? And why does its shadow look like it's pointing at Grandpa's room?" Children saw things adults rationalized away, but Amelia's observation made Patricia's stomach clench with recognition. The shadow wasn't random. It was building a timeline, documenting evidence of calculated murder disguised as compassionate care. Marcus arrived unannounced on Saturday morning, carrying legal documents and wearing an expression Patricia hadn't seen since their childhood fights. "The hospital records don't match your nursing notes, Patty. Dad received twice the recommended dosage in his final week. The attending physician is asking questions." The Labubu doll sat on the mantelpiece above their father's ashes, its plastic features reflecting morning light like accusations. "You were always Dad's favorite." The doll spoke in their father's voice, words only Patricia could hear. "I trusted you to help me die peacefully, not quickly." Marcus continued talking about legal inconsistencies and pending investigations. But Patricia fixated on the shadow dancing behind the urn. It shaped itself into syringes, into IV bags, into her own silhouette leaning over their father's hospital bed. The supernatural manifestations escalated as Marcus pressed his investigation. Patricia's home security system began recording footage that showed her sleepwalking to her father's old room, where she would stand for hours talking to empty air. The recordings captured her voice saying, "I'm sorry, Daddy. I needed the money for the kids. You were suffering anyway." But Patricia remembered none of these midnight confessions. Dr. Jennifer Chang, Patricia's former supervisor at the hospital, received an anonymous package containing copies of medication logs with highlighted discrepancies. The nursing board opened an investigation into Patricia's handling of terminal patient care, specifically examining her father's case. Jennifer had mentored Patricia through nursing school, but professional duty demanded she report suspicious patterns in pain medication administration. The doll's shadow began projecting memories onto Patricia's bedroom walls like a supernatural movie screen. She watched herself calculating morphine dosages, researching untraceable methods of increasing medication absorption, timing injections to coincide with nursing shift changes. Her father's trust in her medical expertise had made the murder almost effortless. Each dose administered with professional competence and daughter's kisses. Patricia tried destroying the doll by throwing it into her fireplace. But the vinyl figure emerged unmelted from the flames, its smile unchanged, its shadow now permanently stained with soot-black accusations. She drove it to the city dump and buried it under construction debris, but returned home to find it sitting in her father's favorite armchair, positioned exactly where he'd read bedtime stories to her grandchildren. Marcus discovered their father's hidden journal, documenting Patricia's increasingly aggressive suggestions about ending the pain and going peacefully before things get worse. The old man had written about feeling pressured to change his will, about Patricia's constant presence during his most vulnerable moments. The journal's final entry, dated 3 days before his death, read, "Patty keeps adjusting my medicine. I feel strange after she visits. Something isn't right. The shadow cornered Patricia in her bathroom Tuesday night, surrounding her with images of her father's final moments. His confused questions about increased drowsiness, his attempts to call for help as respiratory depression set in, his final realization that his daughter was killing him. Through the supernatural connection, Patricia experienced her father's terror and betrayal, understanding too late the magnitude of her crime against someone who'd loved and trusted her completely. Patricia called the police from her car at 3 a.m, confessing to her father's murder while parked outside the cemetery where he was buried. The 911 operator guided her through details about medication timing, dosage calculations, and inheritance motives, while the Labubu doll sat silent on her passenger seat, its work nearly complete. Detective Santos, fresh from closing Christopher's case, recognized the pattern of guilt-driven supernatural justice. As dawn broke over the cemetery, Patricia walked to her father's grave carrying the doll. She placed it on the headstone and whispered her apologies to empty air, knowing her father's spirit had already found its voice through the vinyl messenger. The shadow aligned itself perfectly with the doll's form, no longer reaching for hidden truths, now that justice was emerging from darkness into light.